Good evening and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio presents Elements of the Paranormal. We've got an interesting talk and a live roundtable discussion that will be taking place tonight. We'll be taking your questions, so if you'd like to include questions, I'll do my best to pepper them in throughout tonight's conversation. I wanted to make a couple of quick mentions. First thing, we've been doing the show for a long time. I want to apologize up front for some of the scattered things that are popping up on our social media feeds, but we are doing something that we don't usually do. We're sharing a GoFundMe page. Longtime friend of our show, Brett Butler, the medium, psychic, comedian, actress, has fallen on some rough times because of health issues during the COVID crisis, not being able to work during the COVID crisis, and some health issues all the way around. So right now, we're doing our best to try to help raise some money for her to keep her a roof over her head, her medical, everything up to date, and be able to help her. So what we're doing is a GoFundMe page that is live and will continue to be live till we can reach that goal. If you are so inclined to help and you have it in your heart, $1, $5, $1 million, whatever you've got, you can email me, dave@darknessradio.com, and I will send you the link for the GoFundMe, or you can go check out my Facebook page. And there you'll be able to scroll down. You'll see the information and be able to be a part of this and help out. I'm sorry. I'm trying to message people offline here because I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I suddenly have a demonic loud creature in my house mewing from another room that apparently wants somebody's attention. And it very well could be Cheech the Wonder Cat. And at some point during tonight's conversation, if he continues to walk around, you may hear him say, "Mom," looking for my wife. You may hear him saying, "Hello, hello," because that's what he does when he's looking for somebody to show him attention. And so if you start hearing these creepy, weird voices, that's just my weird cat. So I'm just forewarning you on that. I want to also mention, I've been advertising. Bill Bean is a part of the show tonight. He is not. Reverend Bill Bean had to drop out. He is a demonologist, exorcist. He helps a lot of families. He had to redivert. He was on his way home, was going to be a part of the show. He is going out to help a family in desperate need right now. So Reverend Bill Bean will not be here this evening, but we have a great guest filling in for Reverend Bean, and we'll be talking about an interesting aspect of the supernatural. Because he's not there, as I had promised, and because we're not doing a Holzer's Ghosts, as I had promised, because things got away from me. It's been a hectic couple of weeks here, and I wasn't able to contact all the guests I wanted for the Holzer's Ghost episode. I feel bad, so what I want to do is reward you all by showing you my junk. Let me go down here and get it. Again, just to remind you, you can get my junk by ordering it. I've got the Other Side book, which is a guide to ghost hunting and the paranormal. You've got the Holzer Files autograph card. I'll sign it, make it out to you, your friends, your neighbors, your countrymen, whatever you're looking for. And also the Darkness Radio car decal. Now, we've got these kits for right now going for $20 plus $5 shipping and handling. That's right. You get the autograph book, you get the decal, you get the autograph Holzer Files card, all for $20. So it's a great value for you. If you're interested, email me, dave@darknessradio.com, and just say, "I want Dave's junk." And I will make sure that my wife invoices you and gets that taken care of. Let's get into tonight's program. Elements of the Paranormal is our topic. And this evening, we're going to be discussing all different facets of the supernatural. First up on tonight's roster, good friend of the show, our Monster Watch analyst and specialist from the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, Mr. Eric Altman. Good to have you back with us, Eric. Yes. Yeah.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. Now that all of our mics are unmuted and we're ready to go and online, I'm good. Glad to have you back with us. I know we've had some strange sightings over the last week or so here, so we're going to talk about a couple of those weird stories. So stick with us for that. Also joining us, a good friend of the show. She was with us not too long ago on Darkness Radio. She's back tonight to be a part of the roundtable. We've been trying to find a date and time to get her in. She was able to help today. Halo readings. We've got the one, the only Denise Marie. Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks for being on with us. Joining us as well, and this is exciting. I think this is her first visit with us on Darkness Radio. Michelle worked behind the scenes diligently on Midnight in the Desert when I was a part of that program, and helped in booking guests and being a part of the show. And sometimes she'd come on the show to weigh in and help us out. She is still helping out on Darkness Radio from time to time with digging up a few of the guests that you get to hear on our program. But tonight, I wanted her for her speciality. She is a teacher. She is an investigator in her own right, and she is involved in something I'm fascinated by and plan on learning much more about. And I know I've been saying that for years, but I'm finally at the point I want to get this done. Michelle Freed is here to talk to us about remote viewing and how we can utilize that in the aspects of paranormal and understanding the paranormal as well. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Look, it's nice. For those of you watching the video, we were getting all crunched up there. Now it's starting to spread out. Now you can see it's not just Psychic Medium D. It's Denise Marie. You can see the whole name on there. Joining us as well, a longtime friend of Darkness Radio. He's been on the show quite a few times, along with his sister. They have come to us to discuss their abilities in helping rid people and homes of malevolent energy and ghosts and things that don't belong, that may be draining you, wearing you out, taking you down. And I can say this, doing the show, you talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people make claims. And from time to time, we put them to the test. And I can honestly say this gentleman makes the most absurd, ludicrous claims I've ever heard, but he lives up to every one of them, because everybody that we've sent to him has written back to me telling me thank you for having Robert Major give us a call and help us out, because we have been able to get our lives back. Robert, it's great to have you back with us, sir. Thank you for being here.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Dave. I'm happy to be part of your team here this evening, and hopefully I will share and give all the listeners some of the insights that we're aware of.
Yeah, and this is an amazing group of people, because we've got all kinds of different things here, from the psychic realm to remote viewing to ghosts, and I think that a lot of you kind of tie in a way. And then, of course, we've got our cryptid researcher Eric Altman, who is always on the forefront. But I wanted to talk real quickly about a couple of the sightings that are going on out there right now, Eric, because there's some weird stuff. And I've got a couple of pictures and sketches that you sent along. How do you want to begin this? What are some of the best ways to begin with what's going on out there?
Well, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in Pennsylvania, from Bigfoot sightings to giant birds, pterosaur sightings, strange canid sightings going on. Just a lot of really strange creatures.
Pterosaurs. So we're talking what looks like a pterodactyl. People are seeing that in the United States still.
Yes.
This has nothing to do with promo for the new Jurassic World Dominion. Nope. This is okay. Just double checking. So pterosaurs, how often are people seeing giant flying beings?
Well, surprisingly, in Pennsylvania, they're seeing them quite often. And at the end of May, there were two sightings a day apart. One reported seeing this giant black bird-looking creature, and the other, of course, was this pterosaur-looking creature. And there's been sightings over the decades, the past 50, 60 years in Pennsylvania, sometimes 4 or 5 a year that are reported. And we get those pterosaur reports coming in, and there's a difference. We categorize them as thunderbirds. And they're these giant bird-like creatures with a wingspan of anywhere from 8 to 20 feet in length. And that is a drawing that you have up on the screen there of what the eyewitness saw on May 23rd in a little town of Greensburg, Pennsylvania, my hometown. She's sitting at a traffic light and waiting for the light to turn, and happens to look up and thinks she sees a turkey vulture flying across the intersection. But as she's looking at it closer, she realizes it's featherless. It does not have feathers, but instead it has like a membrane type of skin to it. Not scales, but like a leathery membrane type skin. It has the protruding horn in the head, very long talons, and the closest thing that she can resemble this giant flying creature to is a pterosaur. She watched it fly for a good maybe 2 or 3 minutes heading south until it finally disappeared from sight. And again, this isn't the first time that we've received reports like this in Pennsylvania. Stan Gordon, who you've had on the show before, he's been investigating for over 62 years, and Stan has had multiple eyewitnesses come forward and report these really unusual looking creatures. And I know you just had a guest on your show not too long ago who talked about seeing pterosaurs or pterodactyl type creatures in Texas. So they're being seen all around the country, and we have no explanation for why or what exactly they are, but people are seeing them.
All right, let me ask you this then, Eric. When you're hearing claims like this, Bigfoot's one thing. We've got wooded areas that are thick and dense that could actively keep these creatures hidden. The skies are hard to hide in, right? And especially with beasts and beings like this. First of all, in the areas they're being sighted, is there even enough natural resources for something this large to exist and have enough food and water? And what do you make of that?
Well, there are plenty of resources. There's plenty of water sources and waterways, forested areas for this thing to nest in, plenty of food sources, abundant food sources in Pennsylvania, anywhere in the United States, really. But you bring up a very good point. Why are these things being seen and we can't yet capture a picture of them? We're still getting one eyewitness seeing them rather than multiple eyewitnesses seeing them. Because if something like this is flying in the sky, it's hard to hide. It should be witnessed by multiple people, much like a UFO. You would expect multiple people to report it, but we're not getting multiple eyewitnesses. We're getting one or two, maybe three if we're lucky. It's almost as if these people are seeing this thing and they're meant to see this thing when nobody else is seeing it. We can't explain that.
Now, I'm not a big outdoorsman, as we've talked about on the show and have laughed at my expense over, but, I live not far from a lake. I've seen some herons and cranes, and when you don't know what you're looking at, they can look really intimidating and huge in specter, right? I mean, all of a sudden you see this thing kind of fan out, and it doesn't look like a bird. It's got this kind of batwing angular look to it, and it's zipping through the sky. How many of these sightings do you think are simply misunderstood bird sightings?
Well, I think probably a good majority of them are. I mean, I myself have seen a heron flying over a bank parking lot about a year and a half ago, and I couldn't identify it at first. I just happened to glance up and see it flying, and it took me a few minutes of watching this thing to finally realize what it was. I had sightings about a month and a half ago of very large turkey vultures that were feeding on roadkill, and my truck came around the corner and saw these very, very large birds on the roadway, and it took me a few minutes to wow, what was that? And then I realized they were turkey vultures. So people may be misidentifying these animals, but in this particular case where the drawing you showed, she gave a very detailed description of what she saw. And of course, it had the protruding horn on its head and very large talons. And she said it was almost 2 car lengths. The wingspan was almost 2 car lengths, and that's an amazing size wingspan. It's much bigger than any common bird that we're familiar with, a heron or turkey vulture or anything like that. So
is this image then, is this something she hand drew and sent to you?
Yeah, she sent that into Stan Gordon, and he shared that with me.
Denise, can I ask you, being a psychic medium, having the ability to kind of tap into things, when you see something like this, a projection of what a person saw, can you pick up from that any kind of energy of, is this somebody who's mistaking? Is this something they truly believe they saw? Is this an attention grabber? Does any of that information even come to you in looking into this, or is this something you'd have to actually hold that paper that they drew on?
No, I'm looking at it right now. What I'm picking up is, I don't know, something about her handwriting. She actually believes that this is what she saw. I do believe that she believes this. Yes.
Okay, so 100%. She does.
Yeah.
No,
I don't think it's an attention thing. I could tell by her writing. I feel like she's like frantic about it. Frantic.
Okay. Now, Michelle, you've been asked to remote view a lot of strange things. Have you ever been tapped to look into cryptids at all?
Bigfoot. Actually, I was looking at the Patterson-Gimlin footage, and the question in remote viewing, we're blind, so we don't even know the question. So the secret question that I didn't know was to determine if that footage is real. And so I had a monitor that was kind of coaching me along, and they're very careful because I don't want to lead me into anything. Right. So basically, I felt very strongly this sense of a huge woman, like female. It was a female. And I had this tendency to want to call it a male, but something in me told me it's definitely a female. And I just felt like I was enormous. And the monitor said, okay, stand up. And I stood up, and he said, I want you to blend with this female that you're perceiving. And I said, okay. And he said, okay, touch your body and describe what you're getting. And so I started, touching my arm, and I just felt like these bones were just huge. And I kept wanting to call it a male, but I'm like, no, it's a female. And then I started getting very hairy and, all these other features. And I was getting, and I think at one point I said, I think I'm Bigfoot. And I was describing the location and everything around me. So I definitely feel that footage is real, because I don't think I would have had a connection like that, especially when I had no idea what the question was. It was completely blind. And then also what I wanted to add, something that you asked Eric about, that the sky is so big and, why can't we get a picture or see it? When I've worked on cases with missing persons, I kind of asked the same question, because some of the detectives have a little, like an area where they think the body is. And they said that it's so hard it's like a needle in a haystack. And even this area that they would kind of know, like the mileage or whatever, the square footage of it, they said it's really, even though they'll line up people and then they just kind of walk a grid, it's really hard to find something like that. And if you realize how high the sky is, humongous, and it also goes up higher, and we don't know if these creatures can, how high they can go. So it is possible that we can miss it. So I just wanted to add that to that, because I remember the detectives telling me that.
Well, Michelle, if I can get you to pull your mic down just a little bit, because where it's resting on your shoulder, we're getting a lot of rustling noise. I just want to make sure we can hear you well. I don't have that problem with hair, you see, so it doesn't brush up against there. Eric, how cool is this? She was asked to actually remote view the Patterson Gimlin film. She's picking up something that it has this muscular, masculine sense, but is female. And for many years, people just referred to Bigfoot as Bigfoot, assuming it's the big hairy guy, as kind of the nickname is. But it's Patty is really the name that's been kind of connected with the Patterson Gimlin film, because they do believe it's a female Sasquatch.
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
That's pretty remarkable that she's able to tap into that. And maybe you should show your shirt. What is that? The Drunken Yeti's Pub? Yeah. Does this look familiar to you at all, Michelle?
Pub, yeah.
Is that how you felt connected? Like a drunken Yeti?
Yeah, exactly. It's uncanny.
Well, let's now I want to bring Robert Major in on this for a moment to ask a question. Robert, in looking over the scope of this and hearing the strange things that are going on, more and more of these creatures and beings are being sighted. Do you believe that this is natural phenomena, or do you believe that these creatures are coming from somewhere else?
Well, in my world, I deal with the invisible. So it's I have no familiarity with the with what everyone here is really speaking about. But I do have the ability to communicate in the spirit realm, and I could ask what they know, and then I could bring the information forward like that. So
do you do that? Then it seems like you're mediumistic in that sense, that you can kind of telegraph to the spirit world to get responses back.
Right. Any questions that we have, they assist us. My sister is she's able to move out of body and they come in body. So we've had multiple personalities come in, and depending on what their expertise is from the other side, that's basically how we get most of our information and how we're able to assist people.
All right. And I think you're going to see, Robert, that with the cryptids may not be in your realm as much, but I think that what you do, what Michelle and Denise do, I think there is a very interesting tie, especially with how you connect with the other side and with these beings that are around us. Eric, let's touch base real quickly on you had another sighting, and I think we popped it up there for a moment. Let me it was this one. What exactly are we looking at here?
Okay, so that happened the day before the pterosaur sighting. And this was passed on to Stan Gordon, who in turn passed it on to me. And again, this happened in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, the same town as the sighting the day prior, or I should say after. And the gentleman called in and asked Stan if there had been any recent sightings of very large birds or flying creatures. And the reason being is he was walking his dog and he had something fly over him that cast a very, very large shadow. And when he happened to look up, he saw this enormous sized bird. This one was different than the pterosaur, of course. This was all black in color. It had a long head, a sharp pointed beak, but it wasn't a leathery type of skin. It looked more like feathers, according to this gentleman. It was just a very large black bird. So much different than what was seen the day before. But this one was much higher, though, about 800 to 1,000 feet, as you can see what he wrote on the sketch that he drew. And even from that height, he said this thing was enormous. He guessed the wingspan to be between 15 and 20 feet from wingtip to wingtip. So again, another very, very large bird-like creature sighted just a day apart, and actually a day before the pterosaur sighting. And it's not unusual that we get reports from Greensburg. We've had multiple reports over the years from a specific location in Greensburg / South Greensburg where these birds have been sighted. And we can't figure out where they're going, but they seem to be flying in the same direction, same type of pattern.
Is there anything to do with heavy levels of alcohol creation in those areas?
There might be some toxic waste being dumped in the creek down there, or maybe some meth going on. I don't know, but they're seeing something in the skies, and it's alarming people when they're seeing it. It's not something that's commonly seen. Like I mentioned, you mentioned the herons, the cranes, right, the turkey vultures. I mean, they're seen around here, yes. But obviously, when these things are seen, it really stands out to the eyewitness, and to the point where they're actually calling someone about it and saying, "Hey, did anybody else see this?" And that's what happened in this gentleman's case.
It would
Denise, go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, sorry. It would be really cool to remote view the reality of these things and see what we get. I have a team, and I'd love to task them on this. It'd be kind of cool to find out what they come up with.
All right, because they wouldn't know. You're just giving them kind of a time of day and coordinates. They have no clue what's going on. And then do they tap in? Do they see these giant raptors of the sky?
Right.
Or now, when they're doing this, Michelle, help us understand, because they're connecting from a totally different place. They're given no information. A lot of time, the information's in a sealed envelope, and they have no clue. So there could be all five of us here. Each one has a different envelope, a different location, a different story. We have no clue what we're trying to tap into. And then it's making that connection. Right. When that happens, do you end up seeing through Dave Schrader's eyes as I see this bird? Are you seeing through the bird's eyes? Are you watching CCTV, seeing Dave looking at the bird? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so there is a protocol to follow. So there's different phases that you transition into, and they're designed. Well, the military first came up with it, and they called it controlled remote viewing. And then in the 90s, another team came up with a more civilian protocol, and that's the one I use, where we tap into our nervous system. So basically we're using all our senses. What do I smell? What do I taste? And as you progress through the session, you get more and more information, and it kind of builds on each other. So for example, you might start perceiving something that's organic or something that is a non-human subject, and then you just kind of probe, what is this non-human subject? And then you'll start getting if it's true, you'll start getting, something feathery or fluffy or flying. You might start feeling, airy or like you're flying. You would start feeling those things. And then another thing I want to add to what Robert was saying, if we task somebody to see an unseen, like a paraphysical, we can remote view that too. In fact, sometimes for fun, we have a lot of fun targets, and we've remote viewed the fifth dimension, just for kicks and giggles, just for a practice. So there's, any question you have, you can remote view.
That's a fascinating element to all of this. And I'm curious then, Denise, being a medium, a psychic, hearing what Michelle just explained, does that sound like a version of what you do and how you pick up on things when you make a connection?
That was really well put, Michelle. Really cool, actually. So how I do it is I physically see spirit with my eyes. So when I connect to the spirit world, I physically see them with my eyes. They kind of look like a photo negative. Sometimes I see colors, sometimes I don't. Mostly I don't. I'll see absence of color for white, gray, blonde hair, and just darker tones for, I'll see salt and pepper. It'll be dark and light. And I see symbols and such. But I do, like Michelle was saying, I do have the other clairsenses where I feel, I hear, I smell, I taste. Sort of. But yeah, I like the way she put that, though. That was really good.
Yeah, the only thing we add, and what might even be helpful for you even, is sometimes when we sketch things out, because the connection, I'm sure you've all heard of automatic writing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like your hands connected to your subconscious. And sometimes you can draw something that you're not really aware of, and it's very important. And then you can start probing that and just get more information. Or sometimes if I have a sketch, I'll look at it and say, tell me more, like, what else do I need to know about this?
Now, Robert, let me ask you, and maybe you could explain to the rest of our panel who might not be familiar with what you and your sister do. Talk to us a little bit about how you help people and what you connect with.
Well, we connected to the other side, I call it, 25 years ago, and it was by accident. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and while my sister was in trance, an entity came through and said she'd love to speak with us, and she needed a little help here on this plane. So once we agreed to help her, she said, well, I'd like to come back and I'll teach you many things. So we can do many, many things. We can move ghosts who are trapped. We can take ghosts. What we find, ghosts cross the line sometimes, and they try to take people over in a weakened state. So that in our view, that's what an exorcist does. They take these entities out of the person and give their life back to them. Well, we've been doing that, and I've kind of put that as a forefront because I think that's the greatest aid that we can do for people now. And we've done thousands and thousands of these through the years. People don't know. I call it the invisible epidemic. And daily I have people contact us and looking for help because we tend to be the last resort, of course. And like I said, I work with a team, and it's me and my sister here. I have trained a few people through hypnosis how to be perceptive and how to alter their states of consciousness so they can see the entities. But right now we just work together, and I have a team on the other side, say 7 people or those who used to live on Earth, help us out in all kinds of ways. I have a veterinarian over there that helps us with any kind of animal problems. Then I have a new member of our team, Imogen, who can go into any area and help trapped ghosts cross over. Because if you don't, as we know, if you don't take that little vehicle, once you pass, you can get stuck. And that's what a lot of people refer to as limbo. So recently we've been just going to places and clearing thousands and thousands of ghosts.
Let me ask you, for the skeptics that are listening to this right now.
Yes.
When you say you're a hypnotherapist and you're helping people to build these abilities through hypnosis. How do we know? I mean, the mind is a very powerful, imaginative tool. How do we know that you're not supplanting a hypnotic suggestion and they only think they're seeing and witnessing this as opposed to actually seeing and witnessing things?
Well, a lot of times we do cross validation where they're seeing the same thing. So if my sister's seeing it, and then I brought a man, and we brought him along. Marcos was his name, and they were seeing the same exact thing. If I had them in separate rooms, they would describe to me the same, whatever they were viewing. So, I mean, people have all these talents out there, some more than others. But I think until you get into that state of relaxation and using that word hypnosis again, but it's a higher sense of consciousness. And that's what I really look for. People have the desire to help because it's like I say, it takes a special person to do the work that we're doing.
Now, Denise Marie, you connect, and I know you've been to places with other mediums and psychics. We've been in places, Tim and I, where one medium is standing next to us going, oh, there's a man here from Zanzibar, and he's dressed in fancy robes and attire. And then the medium on the other side of me is looking at me going, I don't know what Denise is seeing, because I've got just this beautiful woman over here who's dressed like Cleopatra, and she's shaking her head like she thinks Denise is nuts. And then, you know, you're both in the same setting. You're both witnessing something, but you're vastly different. How, again, there's not a moment where you can corroborate, right? The spirits don't look the same. You're dealing in a different level. How do you deal with that and not start to think I'm either nuts or she's nuts? One of us is way off base. I think every medium
at one point has thought that they were nuts. I must be crazy. Is this really happening? You can actually double link. You can do that. You can double link with one spirit. I've done that with a few other mediums.
Right, like Robert was talking about, where they could corroborate the seeing this. 100%. But if you're seeing one person
and
like
the other
this,
person is seeing something different. It's their level of perception. Right, Michelle? It's their level, right, Robert? It's their level of perception. It's also their level of consciousness, so to speak, like where they are in their, sometimes, spirit will come to one person and not the other person. It's because that medium can do something different than the other medium can, or this medium can get to this person and this person is connected to somebody else. And the spirit knows their medium. They know us probably better than we know ourselves. So they'll go through us to get to certain people, or they'll use we're just the conduit. You know what I mean? We're literally just a vessel. So the spirit will choose that vessel. You see what I'm saying?
Is there ever an inherent danger for me to come to a medium? And I know this is a tough question. I'm not trying to throw you under a bus, but
that's all right.
If I go to you and I want to make a connection,
yes, and
you're bringing spirits in, there are other spirits watching. There are other entities that are not positive. Am I opening myself up for attachments of other things that see what's going on? I know what Robert thinks. I want to talk to him about that in a second. But what do you think? Is there any inherent danger in reaching out and trying to get connected?
I'm not going to discount it because I'm very open to all possibility. I just know that it's never happened in my presence. So in my experience, I have not experienced anything like that. I mean, I did tell you this when I was a little girl. They used to shake my bed, like physically shake my bed, and I was scared. But as I got older, I think they were just trying to get my attention. I've been in places, the S.K. Pierce Mansion. I've never had anything follow me home. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm doing my cleansing ritual or what you believe you create. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to discount it, like I said, because everything's possible.
All right. Now, Robert, let me go to you on this. I know you have people come to you with a myriad of ways that they became attached and started having spiritual issues. And I know you're not going to badmouth any mediums that are doing this work, trying to bring light and help to others. But when you start to connect, do you see that loved one spirits have been pushed out of the way and something else has stepped into these individuals and tried to placate them and work their way into their lives of the people being haunted?
What we find is that you have a protective field about you. And once that gets damaged, then it's like having an open window in your house. And then a spirit can come in there. And once they're there, they start influencing you, and because they have their own agenda, so to speak. So, and sometimes they take the back seat, and then at other times they'll go ahead and drive the car. And this is what we're trying to prevent, is that when people, they say, well, it wasn't me who did that. Well, oftentimes we're finding out that that spirit, that other entity that's entered, is responsible for making people or taking the body and causing a behavior. And it gets pretty radical. I mean, I have many cases that I could cover about this. But yeah, I think it's a weakening of the energy field. And then once one comes in, then you can get multiples coming in. And once you have multiples, then all of a sudden you have mental health issues. So in my world, a lot of mental health issues come from a spiritual nature.
Do you find that as well, Denise, in your work, that when you start to connect with somebody who's trying prior to getting to you to communicate or looking for this, that they start to actually they've become such a magnet to spirits that these spirits are overriding the personality of the person seeking help?
I've seen, you're talking about clients?
Right.
Oh yeah. I've definitely seen some clients get a little like over the top, like, something's attaching itself to me and I feel negative energy. And,
but I mean, do you actually pick up on it? Do you're talking to Dave and all of a sudden you see all of these figures that are trying to influence me. Do you ever get that presence or sense? Is that because you shield yourself? Like Robert was talking, we all have that protective shield. Are you shielding yourself from them so they don't come to you?
I think so. I must be doing something right. I mean, knock on wood. Robert, you better not jinx me. I'm coming to get you, buddy. No,
to add to that, I kind of feel that it's about intention. And, I sense from Denise, like you have just this kind of intention that, I'm trying to think of an example, like when you see something, this is a dumb example, but for example, I have a friend and she came up to me and she asked me something about carpool, and I was with my mom and we were having lunch. She came up to the table and she said, oh, so are you doing carpool? And I said, yeah. And she went, interesting. And for me, because I know you can relate, right? So for me, when interesting, right? And so for me, I'm thinking, oh, what's up her, butt? And but my mom, who was sitting there, she didn't hear the same thing because she didn't have like those feelers out for. I was in a space of being paranoid or whatever.
Right.
So if you're looking for, I feel like if you're looking for negative, then you're going to come.
That's the problem with social media and texting, right? If I'm in a shit mood and I'm like, Michelle, if you can't be on tonight, that's fine. Whatever. What do you mean, whatever? No, I meant, okay, whatever. Right. Yeah. Everybody puts into it and reads a certain level of that, experience and what they bring. I got to ask though, Michelle, being a remote viewer, did you try to remote view up her ass to see if it was a pole up there?
Yeah, I wasn't going to do it.
All right. We have a question. Josh says, Dave, how does one who wants to try and experience a medium and who is a skeptic know which medium and place to go with so many for-profit phonies out there? Thanks. Well, first of all, Josh, let me answer so that it doesn't feel like anybody here is having to defend themselves. Everybody should be for profit. I'm personally bothered by people that think all mediums should just give away their work. You're buying their time. They're taking time away from family, from friends, from a day job. And some of these clients are very needy and will 8-10 times a month they're needing something. And a lot of the good mediums I know actually turn them away. They're like, no, we'll talk again in 5 months. And they don't just milk that cow dry. So I think, to say, well, it's a God-given gift. So is Michael Jordan's ability to shoot hoops. So is Cher's ability to sing. That doesn't mean they shouldn't get paid because they have a gift that they've honed and have crafted. It means that their time is just as equally important as everybody else's. So I think that you should always take that into mind. But the best thing is referrals and references. We've had Denise on the show. And have had great responses from her. Mark Anthony, of course, Michael and Marty Perry, the Paranormals, Chip Coffey, Chris Fleming. So we've had some listening to our show. You can kind of get a vibe when you've heard some of the older shows. We had a gentleman named Joe Who, which was another interesting type of medium and psychic. He was a voice evidential. So he had to hear your voice and then he could pick up on it. He didn't work like most mediums and psychics. Unfortunately, we just lost Joe a month ago. He passed away from cancer. But listening to some of these people, watching and reading what people have to say about them, like I said at the beginning, and I didn't mean it, as a diss against Robert Major. But when he first reached out to me, I remember telling Tim, this guy's a wackadoo, but let's talk to him because sometimes the wackadoos are a lot of fun. And listening to the stories, you get enraptured. You're like, what? That what? No, really? And then listeners start writing in and they're like, I need to talk to Robert. And Tim and I had that debate. We're like, oh God, do we send them? What if this guy and his sister are completely batshit crazy? And we send them to him. And he's like, I'm going to need you to strip naked in front of the camera, Denise, so I can look over and make sure that there's no demons attached to your areolas. Right. And then I'm like, oh dude, this is so dangerous a place to be in. And Tim's like, well, just send a couple and let's see. And then all of a sudden, a couple of these people came back to us and they're like, I got to tell you, Dave, I was not sure how I felt about this. I talked to Robert and his sister. They helped me. I've gone out there. I've met with them, or they've come out and met with me. And I've never felt better. Something has been lifted from my family. My health is better. My mental anguish is better, everything. And we started hearing that time after time after time. And once in a while, you're going to listen, we all know because of the internet, people love to bitch and the bitchers love to talk the loudest. And I don't hear any bitching and there's no complaints about a lot of the people that we've had on our show. So those are the people that I look into. So I would say, Josh, your best bet is thorough. Like you're going to go out and buy a new car. You want to read about which cars are available, what the safety features are, how they work, and then make the best decision that suits for you. Plus, go with your internal feelings and gut. If you talk to somebody or you see them and you get this bad vibe, don't talk to them. Find somebody else, because a lot of it, I truly believe, has to do with the intent, which I think is important for each one of us, right? As Bigfoot and cryptid investigators, the intent of putting out this desire and want is what helps some people get that attraction. The intent to want to connect with my mother who passed away, Denise can help because that intent creates this bridge. For Michelle, the intent to seek what is unseen in this envelope becomes something. For Robert, going out and helping, these people are looking. The intent is to rid themselves of these things. His intent is to help. So once the intent is set in yourself, that's, I think, the best way. But you can certainly check out haloreadings.com for Denise Marie, talk with her and get a reading. That's the best way to go in. But I've got to tell you, for you and everybody, I'm a skeptic too. I don't believe everybody that comes across my desk and tells me that they have these abilities, but you have to be open-hearted. Being a skeptic and being guarded is okay. But if you go in and you shield yourself, it's like I always say, if I go to a location and somebody's always complaining to me, I never have any paranormal activity happen, and they've got a bottle of holy water in their pocket and a pocket version of the Bible in their back pocket, and they've got crucifixes and stars of David and Elvis tattoos that say, Jesus is my man. They're trying to protect themselves. If I'm a ghost, am I going to go to the guy who looks like he's terrified to communicate with me, or am I going to go to Dave Schrader, who's there and wants to communicate and is putting forth that intention? So sometimes you have to lower the resistance and let the magic happen. And that's what happened for me in a lot of the instances of dealing with psychic mediums. But Denise Marie, let's give a bit of advice from your perspective. Now that I've taken some of the burden of proof off your shoulder, what is the best way for somebody to get that feeling and find a medium that they can trust?
Thank you, Dave. And very well said, actually. Thank you. Josh, honestly, listen, any good medium is not going to ask you questions. You should never have to feed a medium. Okay. And really, it's not even about the medium. It's about spirit bringing evidence. They need to bring evidence. So you're going to get evidence from a medium, not questions. So,
Denise, I'm going to buy you a T-shirt that says, "Please do not feed the psychic." Right? Do not feed the medium.
Oh, I like that, and I'm going to hold you to that.
I'll make you one. Yeah. I'll get out my riveter and start, creating a shirt for you. Yeah.
My boyfriend booked a reading with me. This is how I met him. I normally don't date clients, but he's really hot. I said, screw it. And he's wonderful.
Already you've just kind of ruined your credibility. He's hot.
No, listen, he's hot.
Gorgeous. Yeah, I see a beautiful medium in your future, and you should really connect.
I see me giving you my phone number. No. He actually booked a reading with me under the name John Wick because he was a skeptic. He didn't want me to look him up.
Sure.
He showed up at my house. I brought through his wife that passed, and she showed me things, and we ended up being friends, and the rest is history. But the point is that he knew better. You know what I mean? He knew better. Don't give her my real name. A real medium doesn't need your name. I could care less about your name. I look on the thing. I see the first name. I forget it as soon as I look because I'm 49. I can't remember squat. So, but a true medium doesn't need any information from you. So, Josh, that's how you know.
You know what, Denise Marie, I'm going to challenge on one thing on this. And Robert you might get a kick out of this as well. When I first had Chip Coffey on our radio show.
I love him. Love him.
Chip was, I have him on and he goes against everything you just said. And he's like, okay, Eric Altman, who do you want to communicate with? Well, who's there to meet with me? Listen, we've got 5 minutes to do this reading, Eric. You just tell me what her name is or his name, and I will connect. I'm not going to sit here and play telephone all day long for you.
Wow. And you do his accent really good.
But what was great is this guy's on our show, and he goes, I want to talk to my girlfriend, Michelle. And he goes, okay. She's here. She says, you need to get over it. You have to stop sitting in the car listening to that song over and over and over. She said, oh my God, get back to living. And this guy goes dead silent. Now, here's what Chip didn't know is I lined up all these calls because I didn't want his friends calling in and getting fake readings. I wanted it to be my people. So I'm listening, and all of a sudden this guy goes, oh, wow. I do. I sit in the car and I listen to the song that we used to listen to all the time. So here's a medium who flies in the face of it. He's like, I ain't got time all day, Dave Schrader, to dick around. Just tell me who you want to communicate with. And it's funny because that's a unique, interesting perspective of it. So even what might be a rule for some is not for others. But again, he doesn't want you to go, yes, I want to communicate with Michelle, my girlfriend who died from choking on Hubba Bubba bubblegum in 1985 while listening to Wham, because then you've given him too much, right? He wants to say, I'm picking up on choking and I hear Wham. Does that mean somebody hitting him in the back, or are they wake me up before you go, right? And he's looking for that evidential aspect of it. So sometimes there is a groove just to get into, and then the medium takes off from there. So, but be wary not to vomit too much information, which I've already done. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got more to discuss with our guests. We've got another creature sighting, and I want all of you to weigh in on this freaky looking thing. We'll do that when we return. Eric Altman, psychic medium Denise Marie, Michelle Freed, Robert Major. We'll all be back right here on the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the program. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is Darkness Radio, special edition. Tonight, we're talking about different phenomena in the supernatural, kind of its ties to one another. And as we talk to a cryptid researcher, we talk to a gentleman who helps rid people and homes of ghosts. We talk to a medium who helps connect people to the other side, and Michelle Freed, who is a remote viewer and helps to look into different aspects of the world's mysteries in a blind capacity. This is a fascinating kind of topic to talk about. We have questions coming in. We want to get to those questions as we move along. And Susan has one to kick off this second segment. Susan Woodcarver says, can we discuss guardians? And why don't we do around the horn real quickly? We'll start with you, Robert. What do you think guardians?
Guardians as guardian angels?
Yeah, guardians, guardian angels, spirit guides, whatever you want to describe the name to.
Yeah, we're aware that everybody has a spirit guide. And we tend to introduce those people to them. And we say, if you need help, go ahead, and this is their name. And before you retire in the evening or just when you're waking up is the best time to communicate. So when you're having questions about life, they'll try and give you some answers. This is a regular thing that we do because everyone should know that you're not alone on this quest, so to speak.
You know, what's funny, we did a show years ago, and this person, I believe it was Rita, the angel reader, and she's like talking to people, and she's like, oh, yes, Michelle, your guide is Uriel, the very powerful angel, and he does this, and he'll help you with that. And, oh, yes, Denise, your guide is Michael, the archangel. And Eric, your guardian is Gabriel, right? And Dave, your guardian is Larry. And I get Larry. They've got all these angels, and I get Larry. And Larry's like got a pocket protector and his tape on his glasses, and I'm not going to take advice from Larry, the guardian angel. But she's like, they do different roles, so I'm just automatically picking up on like Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life, this kind of bumbling, goofy looking. Michael, help me! Right? That's the guardian angel I'm going to get. But when you're working with people, Denise, to connect, do you get connected to their guardians as well? Can you tell who's with them as an angel as opposed to a family member just with them?
Honestly, if I do see, because I physically see spirit, but if I were to see an angel, they kind of come in like a little blue, like little sparkle. And then when I look head on, I can't see them. I can only see them in my peripheral. But honestly, I don't do that because there's no evidence. I could say whatever I wanted. And that to me is just bullshit.
Well, Michelle, what about...
It's not bullshit. Right. If you really can, that's great.
Right.
But for me, I just would rather bring in evidence.
You guys heard it. Denise Marie thinks angels are bullshit. So
no.
I don't know.
You blew it.
Michelle, when you're doing remote viewing, do you ever encounter spiritual energy? Do you ever, like, if they're telling you, you don't know it, but your actual target is this guy, Dave Schrader, and you start honing in and don't know, do you suddenly see Larry, the guardian angel, standing behind me, eating like a payday bar and drinking tab? I mean, do you see that, or do you just pick up on the person themselves?
Only if the tasking was to remote view Dave's guardian angel, or
it has to be that specific for you.
Right.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to know, I would be able to describe them, sketch it. I would ask a question like, what's important for Dave to know? Is there a message? I would be able to get all that stuff. Again, I would be blind. So I would just go through my session and do that. And so whatever the question is, I can answer it.
Robert, how do we call forward our guardians? And should we bother them? I always feel like, like watching, I think mediums get abused sometimes because they're like, every week they're like, Denise, I just need to know, where did I leave my keys? Denise, am I going to meet the man of my dreams? Denise, is Bigfoot real? And it's the same person 100 times.
Never stops.
Right. Robert, do we bother our guardians by calling on them and asking for their help?
Not at all. It's their job. It's their job to look over you.
Larry's sitting there reading The Other Side by Dave Schrader, and he's like, this jackass again. But that's their gig. You can't wear out your guardian angel?
No, you can't wear them out. And oftentimes we find out that they had, in previous lives, that they had relationships with that individual. So there are sometimes connections. And a lot of times a spirit guide has similar interest in their lives, maybe about what you're doing. So the tie-in is pretty extraordinary.
Janice says, I was told my spirit guide was my godmother who died right after I was born. Do we actually get ascribed spirits from our lives that will come back to us and be our guardians? Or is it guardian in a different way, as opposed to Uriel and Azrael and Michael and Larry? I mean, is this kind of ghost of your godmother? Is this more of a protector, more of a guide, as opposed to a spirit guide and a protective guardian?
Well, it can happen. I don't really see that often, where it was a family member that becomes your spirit guide. But I do see that quite often there was a relationship in previous life.
All right, very cool. Well, let's oh, good grief. Let's we have an interesting question here I've got to answer because it's, pertaining to my show. Scary Harry Flanagan says, I haven't listened to Darkness Radio in a minute. Are they still doing new shows? No. We're not. We're only doing reruns. As you're listening to a rerun, you've somehow tapped into time travel, Scary Harry Flanagan. Yes, we're doing new shows. As a matter of fact, if you look on today's program guide, scroll on down, you'll see, go listen to our show. We're on Stitcher. Any podcast tool out there, you can find Darkness Radio. We are 15 years anniversary just passed. We're in our 16th season of broadcasting. You've missed so many shows, Scary Harry Flanagan. Get your ass out and start listening again. It's the only way your soul's going to be saved. Larry, my guardian angel, just told me that. Eric, let's talk about this other creepy creature that was sighted. I mean, I'm going to pop this up, and maybe I should pop it up and have Denise tell me what she picks off of it before you even describe what the hell this was about. Do you want to do that? Denise, are you up for a little bit of an Etch-a-Sketch challenge? Let's see what we've got. Look at that.
Oh my God. What the heck?
I'm thinking goat with mange, Wile E. Coyote on crack.
Rabid dog that hasn't eaten in 6 months.
Yeah.
What the heck?
So, Eric, what is the story behind this weird creature? And for those of you that are listening to the podcast, I'll have all 3 of these photographs up at darknessradio.com. Click on the news tab, and under today's date, on Friday's date, you'll see these 3 photographs posted there. But what's the story to go along with this Dr. Seussian looking creature?
Okay, so before we get into this creature, I got to set the stage for this because it'll explain how this witness came into play. Okay. On June 9th, 2021, this just past week, a woman posted on one of my Facebook groups, Weird and Mysterious PA, that she had an encounter with a black mass that had red eyes while she was walking on a country road between 9 and 11 p.m. And she wanted to know exactly what this was. She had no idea what she experienced or saw. So, of course, everybody in the group started answering Mothman, Bigfoot, all these different cryptids. And I have a researcher, part of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, named Rick Fisher, who I sent this information to him. And I said, Rick, you're close to her. Reach out to her and see if you can talk with her and find out what's going on. So they agreed to meet, and they sat down. Well, this woman brought a gentleman with her. And during the conversation, they were talking about this woman's encounter and sighting. And this guy that was sitting at the table with them talking and during the interview seemed almost like he was having flashbacks or PTSD. And he just seemed really upset and emotionally disturbed about the conversation that Rick and this female witness were having. So Rick asked this gentleman who was sitting at the table, have you seen something kind of strange? You seem kind of disturbed by what we're talking about. And that's when he brought up the subject of the picture that you just displayed. This happened in Cambria County, and this gentleman was so disturbed by what he experienced and what he saw, he refused to tell the date, the exact location, and a lot of details. He really didn't want to talk about it, but he was willing to sketch what he saw. And according to this young man, what he described is he and a group of friends were out in a wooded area in Cambria County. And Cambria County is in the southwestern part of the state, and it's a very mountainous, rugged part of the state. And while they're out walking through the forest, they encountered this cryptid that you just showed the drawing of. And he described what it looked like very briefly, but he said it had a very long tail. It was very thin. As you can see, it didn't look like it had a lot of hair on it. And the unique thing about this creature is it ran backwards very, very fast. When these guys saw it, they decided they were going to leave very quickly. They didn't know what it was. So they began to exit the forest in the opposite direction, and this thing gave chase. It chased after them. So apparently it was a very aggressive creature. But unfortunately, due to his emotional state and the fear that this creature installed upon his experience, he didn't want to discuss it any further. So at this point, we don't know exactly what this thing is that he saw, when he saw it, or the exact location of where he saw it at.
All right. Well, then, have there been other reports of creatures like this? It almost has that chupacabra-like feel to it, with the spiky back and the gangly, gaunt-looking creature. But now chupacabra seems to be the Madonna of the cryptid world. It changes its look every few years. It used to be this winged creature, and then it became kind of a lizardy-looking creature. Then it became kind of a mangy wolf-looking creature. What do you think this beast might be if we're looking at that image? What does it bring to mind for you?
It looks like some kind of canine, whether it's a coyote with mange or just a domesticated dog, a sickly-looking dog. That's what the impression is I got of it. But it looks like a very, very sickly-looking canid. I honestly don't know what it is. I've never seen anything like that in the forest. And it could be something that's a hybrid, something that's diseased. It's hard to say really what it is.
Could be Larry the Guardian Angel's pet.
It could be.
If any of you watching live have seen this before, it also looks like the Grinch or something. I mean, it's a very weird looking creature. But if you've seen anything like it, and you're listening to the podcast version, email me, tell me your story. If any of you watching live have seen anything like this, I'd love to hear, a little bit about that encounter as well. Is that kind of a new looking cryptid creature for you, Eric?
It is. I've never seen anything like that. And the unique description this gentleman gave, that it ran backwards very fast. That's the first time in 25 years that I've been doing this that I've heard of a cryptid being able to run backwards at a very high rate of speed. Usually the animal would turn around and run the opposite direction, but this thing ran backwards. And that's the first time I've ever heard something described in that kind of detail. Looking at the drawing, it's again, I wasn't there. I didn't see it. So it's hard for me to say what it is, but it definitely is a very creepy looking thing. And it looks, like I said, emaciated, sickly. Maybe it has mange on it. It's hard to tell. But what he drew, if he did encounter that thing in the forest, it's very spooky. And one thing I wanted to add during this conversation with Rick, that they were talking about this thing, he was very specific in telling Rick, do not go looking for this thing. So it obviously had quite an impact on him when he experienced it.
Do not go looking for this thing. All right, that's Robert, I need to know, you're kind of laughing, but is the veil thinning? Are weirder creatures, are interdimensional beings entering our world more often?
Well, as I explain to people, I just say that the darkness is becoming more prevalent. I think it's kind of rearing its head a little bit more, and we're finding a lot more people are being attacked or attached by negative energies. I don't know if there used to be, a hands off, but no longer is there hands off. So for us, it's all about battling darkness. Now these creatures, I have no idea. I've never seen any of them.
Do you ever? Well, your sister and you, when you're working and you're helping to clear locations of evil entities, do they ever take forms of deformed creatures or animals?
Oh yeah, they do. The longer that an individual ghost, the more distorted they become. We removed an old Chinese guy from a young woman, and he looked like this radioactive worm, and that's what my sister could see. So I was getting it that the longer that they're in the ghosting phase, that the more that they distort. So that in my mind, I was thinking, well, this is why they took on the demon image.
You keep talking about needing to fight the darkness, and slowly your screen just keeps getting darker, Robert. In a few seconds, you're going to end up looking like Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars.
Yes, the darkness is rising.
I'm going to have to get my battery charger on here. I'll be right back.
You do that while we continue. Michelle, then one thing I'm curious about, like if I tasked you and your team and I have 5 different envelopes, and one of the envelopes I have is having you connect with Roland Doe, the young man that was possessed, that was the case that the movie The Exorcist was based on. Does this put you in any kind of danger connecting to that? And if it's something evil, it coming back through the timeline to get you?
Well, it's really how we would phrase the tasking. So we would be very careful about how we would ask the question. We would, I'm trying to think how we would phrase it.
Right, because some of us would just think, I just want to know if this really was a case of possession, and not realize that there might be inherent dangers. By asking those questions and putting that in there, and you start connecting, you're in essence becoming kind of one with the person or the area. Has the person you've ever connected with, have they ever noticed that you're there psychically or mentally, whatever it is?
Yeah. So there is something called remote influencing, and a lot of people talk about that too. There are several people who, when they had a target that they were remote viewing, if there are alien bases on the moon, or if they're remote viewing anything with the government. Like a lot of people want to know, are they still doing something with remote viewing in the government now? They always get blocked. They feel something that is like really hard and they can't get through. And so that's never happened to me, but I did have one experience where we did not, how you say the envelopes and everything? We didn't even pick the target until after we did this session. It was an experiment to see what we could do. So that we literally had a random number and we just did a session, and we had no idea which of those envelopes until the end, because when you're remote viewing, there's no space and time. So we're just kind of going into the future of the tasking that we're going to be given. And so in this particular case, I'm doing my thing, I'm on my paper, and that little voice inside your head that kind of talks to you, that whisper, I noticed slowly that voice wasn't mine anymore. And it was like a baritone, a very deep voice. And I felt like it was taking over my session. So what I usually do, So what I do is I hit break. I write that on my paper and I pull out of session, and I'm like, what the heck just happened? So I called my friend because we were working, there were 3 of us working on this project.
All okay, Michelle. There's nothing to be afraid of. Baby. It's like you're channeling Barry White. I love that.
Yeah. Right. And I said, what the heck's going on? I know I didn't feel fear. I was more shocked that, like, what is going on? Because most of our targets are benevolent. We don't go into malevolent. Anyway, so we're like, okay, so we met up and we had a little Zoom meeting and we picked the target, and the target was to visit with an alien. It was some alien that, and get some information from the alien. And I'm like, wow, that's just crazy. So we decided let's tomorrow continue this session and find out what the alien, if this is true or whatever, what it wants to say to us. So we're all like, okay. So I go to sleep, and and it's really strange because I'm sleeping and I'm feeling like I'm falling backwards in darkness. And it was just really scary. And when I woke up, I felt like I had been drugged, and this, all the heat in my body just poured out of me immediately. And I'm like, this has never happened to me before. So I call the 2 other people.
Wait, Michelle, do you think that you were dealing with an abduction?
I know so I called this other guy, And he's like, yeah, I had something similar happen to me. And then we called the other lady, and she said, she goes, well, I was smoking weed last night, so I was out like the light, so you can't count on me. I'm like, okay. So he said that he thinks that maybe, that was a visitor and that we tapped into something, because I've never in my life ever had anything like that happen to me. And here I'm just going my way, doing my session like I always do. And boom, this crazy thing happened. So then I did the session, and it was like I was channeling. I was just kind of writing this kind of download that was coming. I can't even believe I'm telling you this, but I'm writing it all down, and it's like, it doesn't make sense, but it sounds a lot like, like giving me advice and something about the world and all these, really big, I have to find it to get all the wording and stuff, but it was some kind of spiritual information. And that was just a crazy experience. But
does that worry you? Because if you've suddenly plucked that cord to an alien, are you worried that they now know how to find you?
I feel like I protect myself pretty well, like Denise talks about. Like, I think anytime we're doing this, there's really important things that you have to do. And one is to protect yourself and have a good intention. And I'm also very careful with who I work with, making sure that they don't have me do, things that I wouldn't want to be doing. Protecting yourself. And the other thing that's so important is at the end of any session, really at the end of any time you're with somebody else, you should be breaking it. You sever that connection and call back your energy. And so then they can't really find you because you're just making a break.
Talk about that then, because I'm sure that's part of what Robert deals with too. Sometimes people don't realize, and Denise and I have spoken about this, we make connections with people all the time, and we kind of like a web, and all of a sudden Eric Altman and I are connected. We've been friends for years. There's this thread between us. There's threads between you and I, threads between Denise and I, threads between Robert and I. And if something starts influencing them, are we getting feedback through that web of their negativity, of their distress? And could that be why some empaths are just always being crippled, because they're forgetting to cut and pull back their energy, Michelle?
Yeah, I noticed that all the ex-military guys, they have been doing some really, because they are doing missing persons, they're doing crimes. And I know that they don't break away from sessions. And I think that they carry it in them, and it has become physical illnesses for them. I think that, they have heart problems, they have leg problems, they have trouble walking, and they're not really old enough, to be going through those. Well, some are, but they really, I think that they're carrying all these years of that. And I wonder, Robert, if that could be like the seed that starts these negative entities, by keeping someone out, like my mom. I love her dearly. But, she said, crazy things to me, joking, but she kind of, like, oh, Michelle, you have a face for radio. And I know she's joking, but it's like, you get programmed, and maybe that little seed starts, becoming big, and then to the point where they need to come to Robert and get help with it.
Well, I work with a lot of, ex-military and the PTSD. What I do find is that they do get weakened in combat, and when the enemy is supposedly destroyed, they're not destroyed. You cannot destroy spirit. So if somebody loses their physical life, they're still a spirit, and now that spirit can attach to that person who took their life and drive them crazy. They can create physical problems. They can cause suicides. I mean, many military people come, but again, as Dave says, they can't really tell about this. It's kind of like, okay, just help me out and don't tell anybody.
Denise, the toxicity of past relationships, do those work like a ghost in the sense that energy is, and we expend energy in our relationships, friends, love, coworkers? Does that energy take on a life form of its own? When we break from these toxic work environments or boyfriends and girlfriends, do these specters of what they did to us linger? And I don't mean psychologically, I mean empathetically. Is it like a shit bath? You need to get showered off and just clear it, get rid of it.
You need to cleanse. Right, Michelle? You need to cleanse. It stays in the walls. So it's like if you go to shop for a new home, anybody who shopped for a new home or a new place to live, you feel the energy of that space and you're like, oh, I don't like the way this place feels, right? You can walk in anywhere. Most of us are empathic and don't even realize we are. And you can just sense like, oh, I don't like the way this feels. Bad energy, negative energy. If you had a couple that lived there that fought constantly, that energy lingers in the walls. You know what I mean? When I sage houses, when I go to cleanse people's homes, you got to get into the corners. You got to open all the windows. You got to have an intention. Like Michelle said, you set the intention to clear out that space. And yes, absolutely. I cleanse my phone, my dog. I check my kid, myself constantly.
Yeah, I think like even people that we love, their energy doesn't belong in us. It doesn't belong there. As much as we love it, we really do need to make sure that we call back our energy and release their energy.
Well, real quickly, how do we do that? And then I have a question for you, Eric, to kind of continue this weird element, which I know might be new to you, but I want to know what your thoughts are. Michelle, how do we pull back that energy then?
Well, really just going into kind of a cool down or a trance where you imagine your energy coming through your chakra system or through your body and just kind of clearing it out. Just the movement. Like sometimes I imagine a color, usually the color and the energy helps. And you imagine it coming through your grounding cord and then just slowly kind of moving up your body and just clearing everything out. And then kind of sealing the deal with, the source and the gold energy coming. And it's really intention. It's just the intention of anything that is in my body that doesn't belong here, you must leave. And then I call back my own energy.
Well, Eric, let me ask you, in working, I know there's protocol, there's a questionnaire, there's things that you go through. Do you ever ask about the psychic or empathetic ability of the eyewitness? Because I'm curious if there's a correlation between somebody that might be dealing with PTSD that might see flying creatures as opposed to somebody who might be empathetic and they see Bigfoot, and somebody that's more nature grounded and they see sea creatures. Is there ever any kind of element to your investigations where you dig into the psychology of who the witness is? And have you seen some kind of correlations?
We do touch on a little bit of the psychology when we investigate and we look into their background. We don't want to dig too deeply because sometimes that can be offensive to the person. If you ask them, "Are you crazy?" they're gonna get offended by that. So you have to be very careful as to how much you look into and what you look into. But we've come across cases where, yes, there have been people that have shown an empathetic side or a sensitive side to the spirit world, or able to pick up on things that necessarily I'm not, or you're not, let's say. So we have had cases where we've seen that happen. But as far as our digging and what we look into, if they bring it up, then we'll embrace it and we'll try to follow up on further. But usually we don't dive that deep into a person's background or their psyche.
Maybe you should communicate with other cryptid investigators and put together a sideline questionnaire and just ask. These are what we need to know. These are some sideline questions that just are going to help us look deeper into this phenomena of, do you have a history of epilepsy or seizures? Do you have a history of depression or anxiety? Do you have a history of this? They can elect to answer or not, but maybe starting to look at who is seeing what. I'm not putting them down in any way, but like Denise said, she's seeing something because she's tuned in a different way. You're seeing something because you're tuned in a different way. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean they're hallucinating. But can we start to find a thread throughout these spectrums of eyewitness accounts that go deeper than just, yeah, I was out walking in the woods and I done seen a Bigfoot, right? I mean, is there something more to it? And I don't mean to be rude. I know most Bigfoot people are not hillbillies drinking moonshine.
You got a pretty mouth, boy.
Just half of them. but would you ever consider doing that to see if there is a different type of, because maybe that's it. We're in many of the cases we do, and I know a lot of paranormal investigators claim that they go deep, but I look at their questionnaires and they're very glossary. It's very, give me the experience, give me this. Not, what was your mindset? What were you tired that day? Were you dealing with any emotional disruption? And again, this isn't to figure out if you're crazy, but it's to figure out why you would be witness to this and other people hadn't. Or do you only have these type of experiences in certain emotional states?
You know what would be cool is asking them also the moon cycle, because it would be interesting if it's a full moon, when there's sightings.
That's easy enough for the investigator to look up. Okay, it was in Pittsburgh on Wednesday the 3rd in the library with Colonel Mustard and a candlestick. You can look up all that basic information, right? But that would be an interest. Do you do that? Do you look to see if there's a different level of lunar cycles of when these beings are seen more?
We usually get that information from the eyewitness if they're out at night and have a sighting and they tell us, oh, it was a full moon. So sometimes they volunteer that information. But in point to your question about whether or not we would ask something about their mood or their mindset, a lot of cryptozoologists are basing this on physical animals, not necessarily spiritual energy and being involved or an emotion set or even a psychic possibility. So they're closed-minded to that possibility of these animals even having that energy or them bridging that gap. So it's difficult. It's like walking a razor thin line with some of these researchers because they don't even want to open that Pandora's box. They don't want to talk about what's going on and what possibly could be going on. They don't even entertain the possibility that Bigfoot may be an interdimensional being or may have maybe a ghost of a living creature that they're seeing now. That possibility has been brought up in the past, but they're so close-minded that this is simply an animal that has not been discovered yet, and that's all there is to it. So there's no reason to look any further than the possibilities you brought up or the ideas. I myself, as you know, and you know me for a long time, I'm more open-minded to look into that possibility. So some of those ideas you brought up are a great mindset for me to look into further and possibly reach out to some of these witnesses to find out what kind of day were they having? Are they experiencing depression? Maybe they're just tired. Maybe they have empathetic abilities or clairvoyant or mediumship abilities where they can see things that I may not be able to see. Those are some great points. But unfortunately, the entire cryptid field, researchers that look into it, most of them are closed-minded, and they're not going to entertain these ideas or possibilities.
Question for you. Aaron Higgins asks, are all of the strange sightings primarily in Western Pennsylvania?
A good majority of them are, but not all of them, no. We have sightings from all over the state. And I'll be honest with you, I think the reason for why we have so many sightings reported all over the state is because researchers reside in those parts of the state. So if there's sightings going on in the northeastern part of the state and there's nobody up there to follow up or take the report, and they don't know about somebody that lives in Pittsburgh or someone lives in Philadelphia, those reports aren't going to get out and they're not going to be heard. So the sightings occur all over the state. It just depends on who's there to handle the report and take the information and share it. We do it as far as the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society is concerned. We get that information, we share it, and we have researchers all throughout the state. So we have coverage. But if there's not somebody in that area, then we're not going to hear about it.
Let's see. We've got a question from Wisteria. Robert, has any of the info you received from your patients ever made you scared in any way of the light or of the darkness?
Well, yeah, yes, of course. I mean, they're very threatening sometimes. If an attachment becomes dominant within the individual, you could fear for your life. So, I mean, I've had a case where an engineer was totally taken over by the attachments. And I went to visit him, and he told me directly, that individual is no longer here. I'm running the show now, and you better get out of here.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And I knew it. Yeah. That I better leave. Yeah.
When you get that point and they start threatening like that, do you feel a sense of obligation to continue on and help, or do you feel more of a sense of, I need to help myself and get the hell out of this right now?
Well, I knew at that moment that the attachment was very powerful and the individual was very weak. So I just said, I'll be back. And I did return, and we were able to take them. There were 3 of them on the person. And they cussed me out, and it was very Exorcist-like. But now the guy's normal again. So,
what is normal?
Well, it's normal in the sense of his normalcy. I guess. Yeah.
Let me throw this question to. We'll start with Denise Marie, and then Robert, and then Michelle on this. Linda writes into me, and she says, "Dave, my name is Linda. Lately, my husband and I have had a lot of bad luck. We're not looking for handouts, but if there's anyone we can talk to that might be able to tell us why and what we can do." What do you do when people run into this? They believe they have cursed lives or bad luck. Robert, is there something to it besides just bad timing for people?
Well, again, in my world, I've dealt with attachments who wanted to ruin everything in that household, that they said they had intended on the person to break their arm. And so when you're picking up that negative energy, there's a reason. I just don't think it's free floating. I think that it exists. And if they wanted to contact me, I would be glad to go in and see what's going on in their environment.
Well, I'll definitely be sending them your email address, Robert, after this. Robert, how can people reach out to you if they feel like they have an attachment or something dark in their lives or in their home?
Well, I'm Robert Afterlife at Gmail. That's the easiest way.
RobertAfterlife at gmail.com. So you can email Robert directly, RobertAfterlife at gmail.com. Can they be anywhere in the United States or Canada, Hawaii, Alaska?
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. Russia? Comrade, I am having problem. Was wondering if you could make it to Norris. Denise, what do you make of that? Bad luck, curses. Is there something to that? If people believe their lifeline is cursed, is
Robert's
that
not
true?
wrong. Robert's not wrong, and I would never discount your work. I think it's
Robert. We just recorded that. We've got a woman telling you you're not wrong. That doesn't happen.
That's the first.
Listen, for $250 an hour, I'll pose as a therapist and tell your spouse they're wrong about everything. Not really, though. But no, I'm not going to discount what Robert said because it's brilliant what he said, and I respect his work. For me, what you believe, you create. You believe it, you're feeding it. You're feeding it, you're feeding it, you're feeding it, and sage the shit out of everything and do it often. And stop believing that people can have this power over you. Now, if it's a spirit or an entity, then oh shit, you got to call Robert. But if it's right, Michelle. But if it's just I'm having bad luck and everything's going wrong, then sage and just stop feeding that. Stop speaking about it. Stop thinking about it. Just focus on something else, and just.
So, like a bad child, you just ignore the bad child that's harassing you.
You give that child a freaking time out.
That's harassing you and trying to bother you.
Oh, that one. Oh, pretty. Oh my God.
You just
so pretty.
So you just kind of shut them down. Take off the power.
Don't feed it. You're feeding energy. Any energy you give life to is going to grow.
So do not feed the mediums, and on the back of the shirt, do not feed the beasts.
You know what?
Right?
We're going in on this together.
I like it.
Feed the
Let's
mediums.
do it.
You've heard this, right, people?
Robert, Mark says, I feel like mine sure is. Now the question is, how do I remove it? Are we capable of removing these things on our own?
I haven't had. I've never seen that ability with people, because once they're in, they try to entrench themselves. So if they find a host, either they leave on their own or else they need some help. And again, it's not me, it's the spirit world that assists us doing this. They'll tell me, if I have your name at birth and your birth date, I'll tell you if you are attached. And again, it's an epidemic. I call it the invisible epidemic. You may go through your entire life and not realize that you are attached. They have their own agenda, and they're looking. Like, I know who is it? Kanye West. Kanye. He has like 90 on him.
I think it's 99 problems and you're not one. Is that what it is?
Well, I know that, and I've been trying to reach out. I don't know how we reach these people to help them, because they're kind of like buffered, but I do know that. I check anytime I hear a strange case. I check for attachments. So,
Robert, before you reach out to me to come back on the show, do you ever reach out psychically to make sure I don't have something negative around me first? Well, I can. Again, I need your full name at birth and birth date, and the spirit world will let me know if you do have them. My name was Rodney Toppin Twiddlebottom at birth. But again, they're not all malevolent. Right. They're just looking to extend their life in a way. So, I always tell people, but they don't have any right to be there. So it's kind of my thing is to go ahead and make sure everyone can be clear. Cosmic Divine says, I've worked around psych wards with 5150 being admitted, and knowing crazy versus attachment, I can definitely tell the difference just in their eyes. Do you think that there are a lot of people, Robert, that are hospitalized for mental conditions when really all it is something spiritual? Oh, yeah. I just had a case like this about 4 months ago. The poor girl's been in an institution for 8 years. And the evening that we did the removal, the next day, the doctor called the mom and says, your daughter is very responsive now. And it just blew the mom away. The mom, I believe she heard us on your telecast, on your podcast. And it gave her all new hope again. Her daughter now can at least be treated. You can have mental issues, and you can also be attached. But it's going to be very difficult for you to heal with the attachments present. All right. I actually talked to the doctor. And you, oh boy, that was quite a conversation. Yeah, what was the doctor open to it, or did the doctor think maybe you were the next patient he needed to put in? Yeah, I told him. I says, hey, I appreciate you're a doctor of the mind and you're a doctor of the body. I said, but we're doctors of the soul, and a lot of times these people have spiritual problems, and you're not going to really be able to address that. Fair enough. We'll do kind of a round horn here as we're heading out for the end of the show here. Eric Altman, is there an uptick in creature sightings, or are we just at a place where people are just more open to talk about it because the culture allows it?
I think it's a little of both. Myself, other researchers in our state are getting more and more of these strange creature sightings. It's not just Bigfoot they're seeing, as you heard tonight. They're seeing winged entities. They're seeing strange dog-like canid creatures, things that have never been seen before, and we really don't know why. But people are coming forward with these really odd cryptid sightings, and they may or may not be from this earth. They may be more spiritual related. It seems like that we're heading in that direction. Things are kind of opening up. And I think people are more comfortable this day and age with coming forward and sharing their experiences. Are there any creatures you do not want to investigate? I mean, Bigfoot obviously fascinates us, Loch Ness Monster. But if I'm telling you that in the woods there's some creepy Dr. Seussy-looking black creature that runs backwards with glowing red eyes, are you like, I'm on it? Or are you like, hey, let me call Lauren Coleman and see if he'll go investigate this? Well, there's a running joke. I don't have to be faster than you. I just have to be able to trip you. So, right. Are there any creatures you just have no interest in, like the flying creatures, anything like that? It all fascinates me, and I would go looking. Even a Dr. Seuss looking thing in the woods with glowing red eyes, I'd go chasing after it if I could. It'd probably run away from me, but I'd still go chasing after it.
Well, okay. Before I let you go and wrap up that part of this interview, I know the listeners, there's a lot of new listeners checking out the show all the time. And I've asked this question of many of the cryptid investigators in the past. You go out there looking, what if that dog thing finds you, right? What's, it's one thing to go out looking, it's safe for Michelle to remote view from her place and then be able to close that down, or Denise to hang up on the kook that's calling them and has demons, or Robert to go, connection, and later, and then just hang up. But you're in it, man. You're in the woods, and you've gone after this gangly looking beast with red eyes that runs fast backwards, and now it's coming at you. What's the plan?
I haven't got to that point yet.
You should be figuring that out before it's feasting on your flesh like the rabbit in Monty Python's Holy Grail, for God's sake. It's just a fluffy bunny. Right? It's chewing you apart. Right. You don't have a plan?
No.
You have like a
I took one for the team.
Do you have like a taser, anything with you?
We do go out prepared, yes. Some of us carry sidearms or bear mace, or we carry protection with us that if we need to use it, we have it. I've never had to use anything in 25 years I've been out in the forest looking, but there's always, exactly, knock on wood, there's always that first time, and you always have to prepare yourself and be prepared for the unexpected. Hopefully I won't ever have to use a sidearm or a shotgun or a rifle, but yes, we do carry things as a necessity, and it's not so much the animals we're worried about as more the people that you might run into. I think that's more the imminent danger that's out there. So we do, all joking aside, we do take precautions.
Obviously, you're with the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, pabigfoot.com. You can visit Eric. If I'm in Minnesota and I have a sighting, can I report to you as well?
Certainly.
You take reportings from around the United States?
Yeah, we take reportings from wherever anybody is. And we've received reports from all over the country. I'm a member of the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization as well, the BFRO, and I've got a lot of contacts that if I'm not able to personally look into that investigation or that case, then I have contacts that I can forward off to reliable, trusting individuals that I know that will look at that case and give it an objective look.
Isn't it time to take off the Bigfoot name and just call it Cryptid Field Research Operators? Because I would guess at this point, you're willing to look into all these things. Do you ever afraid that you might be missing out on some cool stories because you've pigeonholed yourself as a Bigfoot guy?
Well, that's the main group that we have. The pabigfoot.com is our website, the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. But I also run an organization called the Pennsylvania Cryptozoology Society, and we look into all cryptids. It's a smaller spinoff of our Bigfoot group because we started getting more and more cases of different cryptid creatures, not necessarily all Bigfoot. But Bigfoot's my forte. As you know me for a long time, that's been my main focus. But we started getting more and more cases of different creatures being seen. So we kind of had to create a side group to look into some of these other cases.
Well, maybe you can connect with Michelle offline and task her team into trying to find some of these recent cases so that maybe you can narrow down the search scope. Are you open to doing that, remote viewing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm open-minded, so I'd love to get together with her and yeah.
All right. Very cool. Well, let's, again, check out pabigfoot.com for more information on Eric. Denise Marie, very talented, medium, psychic, sensitive. What's going on in your world and how can people find you? Do you do readings everywhere? Do you do them by phone, by video, smoke signal? What's the best way?
All of the above. I do in-person readings. I do phone readings all over the world. And I do a lot of Zoom groups since COVID happened and it just kind of took off. So, yeah.
If I thought I'm dealing with a demon, would you want me to call you, or is that best suited for somebody else?
Call me.
Don't call you.
Call one of the experts. That's not my forte.
Well, I know, but a lot of people, they want to go to mediums and psychics to get an understanding. If I'm like, is this just a pissed off ghost or a demon? Are you like, hey, I don't want to talk about this, and do you move on? Or
I feel like because of my I don't know how to say this. Like, I want to stay in the light. I just prefer that, You know what I mean? Like, and you know, even when I'm bringing spirit through, and say if they passed away in a gory fashion, I just tell them, you know what, listen, I don't want, and I don't even like, people are like, can you see when I'm going to die? And I'm like, listen, I'm not the Grim Reaper lady. You know what I mean? Like, I would just rather keep it light. And it's not that I'm not discounting that stuff, because it's real. It's just that for me, I would just prefer to be a little lighter.
So you only want pretty ghosts. You're kind of an elitist psychic snob. I got it. Well, if I die impaled with a lawnmower blade, you're like, Dave, don't come see me.
I've had spirit come through where I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm like, he keeps showing me the brain and making my head hurt back here. And it turns out the guy was shot in the back of the head. And I've felt and seen some. I was in the S.K. Pierce mansion doing an investigation with my cousin, and I felt like the blood was draining out of my arms. And I just passed the bathroom, and the woman slit her wrists in the bathtub. Like, they were like, oh my God, she died in the bathtub. She slit her. I felt the blood draining from me. So it's like, you know, I do feel that, see it. You know, it's just that when it comes to demonic stuff, I would just rather not. I'm scared shitless of that. So.
All right. Good to know. And obviously we've already talked to you, Michelle, about the fact that you don't want me to try to send you into the body of Roland Doe to figure out if he truly was X or, you know, filled with demons. But if people are interested in learning about remote viewing and taking classes, how do they do that? Is this something that they need to be in a classroom setting, or can you do this in a Zoom-like setting?
Yeah, I teach classes. There's six sessions, actually starting on the 26th, which is a week from this Saturday. They can go to my website, butterflyeffectscenter.com, and under remote viewing, and it'll tell you what you'll learn and all that stuff. I'm working on putting a team together because I get calls all the time to hire us to work on different kinds of projects. So, yeah. So that's
let me say this. Now, as somebody who remote viewing, I've definitely talked to Joe McGonigal. I've talked to a bunch of great speakers through the years of doing this show. And it's always been a skeptical deal. Michelle, when I was on Midnight in the Desert, had a couple of teachers come on and actually do some live experiments with me that blew me away. And that's why I really do want to. I've been saying this for years, Michelle, so I got to get off my dumb ass here and actually get involved. I think people should try this because it was stupefying, the things that I was able to connect with while doing a live radio show with trillions of listeners, I'm sure, around the world, or tens of listeners. Either way, there was listeners focused on this, but that was really incredible. And I think it's worth, even if you're a skeptic, open yourself up to these paradigms, open yourself up to the possibilities, and you might be really excited about reawakening parts of you that have gone to sleep, that childlike experience of discovering something new and being able to teach yourself a new skill. And that's one I definitely want to work on. Michelle has done remote viewing for me in the past and was eerily accurate. And I tasked her with trying to give me some information on a friend that had vanished. And sadly, she picked up on the sad ending of my friend, who we only found out days later passed. So she was very accurate in these moments. So again, I know it's hard to fathom, and there's quite a few skeptics out there in the world dealing with remote viewing, but give it a try. Take a class, try it, put yourself into these positions, because skeptics are just believers who have yet to have their own experience, right? That's the popular saying. So give it a try. Check out Michelle, butterflyeffectscenter.com. Go sign up for those classes right now. Use Darkness Radio Dave as your coupon code. And that's right. You can sign up one person for the cost of 3. I mean, it's not a good deal, but it's a deal. So nobody's ever made money working with me on this deal. Thank you, Michelle. It was great working with you on this again. Thanks for coming on. Now, Robert, we've got a lot of people that are listening again around the world that have got problems. They're dealing with negative energy. They're dealing with spirits, maybe even demonic realm. The best way to reach you is robertafterlife@gmail.com, correct?
Right. And I also have a website. It's called ghostremover.com.
Ghostremover.com.
That's
the way to check it out. Robert, for listeners right now that feel like they're in over their head, are there any quick tactics, something they can do to start to relieve the fear if they can't get to you in time, something that they can do to start protecting themselves?
For me, it's hard for me to tell them that they have that ability, because once they're in, and like I said, a lot of them aren't dangerous, but when they do have a dangerous one, they should get a hold of me right away. And believe me, I'm quick to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've always been helpful to everybody. So I want to thank you again for coming on the show last minute, filling in for Reverend Bill Bean. Bill apologizes. He will be back with us in the future. Keep a good prayer and thought in your hearts, folks, for Reverend Bean, because he goes out to help deal with people that are dealing with demonic infestation, oppression, and possession. And it takes its toll on the warriors that are doing this work as well. So pray for each one of these members on our panel and Reverend Bill Bean to continue to give them strength, surround them in white light, and protect them going forward. I want to thank all of our listeners and active participants that have been asking questions and being a part of tonight's show. Thank you. Thank you to Tim back home for producing this. Remember, if you're interested, you can get a hold of Dave's junk. You can get my autograph book, The Other Side, A Guide to Ghost Hunting and the Paranormal. You can also get the autographed Holzer Files card and the very coveted Darkness Radio decal. So if you're interested in getting a hold of that, make sure that you reach out to us at dave@darknessradio.com. You can email me there, say that you want to get your hands on my package, and I'll forward it to my wife. She will then send you the invoice. You guys can get that. I know last week I mentioned the rosaries. I had such an overwhelming response. I had rosaries I take to every episode of the Holzer Files, and I think I've got 3 left. So many people emailed me on it wanting to purchase them. I never even ended up putting them up on Facebook to auction them off. If you are interested, you can email me. I'll let you know about them and see if you're interested. But I think I only have 3 left of those rosaries. You'll get a letter, a photograph of the rosary with the episode that I used it on. I'll sign it for you as well. So if you are interested, email me, dave@darknessradio.com, and I'll follow up with you on that information. Stay safe. Be kind to one another. We'll be back again with you next week with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. You've been listening to Darkness Radio.